excited to have Dr. Sarah Milken, the flexible neurotic, on my podcast today. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here. Like I said, I've left a post-it note on the door for Amazon. The dog has been instructed not to bark at the gardeners, and I have two teenagers sleeping because it's still summer and school needs to start.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. You are so funny. And
Oh,
I would like to give you this great introduction, but I'll tell you what, you are the best at introducing yourself because I just want you to say, really, well, I want to say what your podcast is about. And I love this. You said your podcast is about normalizing and inspiring midlife self reinvention. And you probably don't know this, but my very first podcast that I did 2 years ago, the first one was on reinvention. And I've done so
oh
many
wow.
on reinvention because I think we continuously reinvent ourselves, right?
Yeah, we do. And honestly, that could be an episode every single day, a reiteration of what my plan is, what I thought my plan was going to be, and what it is right this second.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
So let's just go back and tell everyone a little about you have a PhD. I mean,
I
when I listened to
know.
your first podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, this girl is smart. And you really are smart. And I love
Oh.
you really get down to the bottom of things. And I know you and I've had a long conversation, which I feel like you're my best friend. If
I know.
we're
I'm
this
a lot of
close to each
people's
other,
best
we would
friends,
definitely hang
apparently.
out.
I'm like, I'll talk to you about your vagina. I'll talk to you about midlife technology. We'll talk about it all.
So, what made you even start this podcast? Because I know starting a podcast isn't easy. That's
Talk about the midlife sweats. I mean, like, I'm already in one because I think one of my teenagers is futzing with the air conditioning. So I'm like, what's happening? It's supposed to be 69 people. Okay, so how did I start? Well, I just by nature, I'm a very performance driven person. I was sort of like the pretty blonde nerd in high school who studied really hard and did well and blah, blah, blah. And I checked all my boxes and I went to an Ivy League school and did more boxes and more boxes. And then I graduated from college. My husband and I moved to London for a year. And then we came back and I got my master's and my PhD in educational psychology. And I grew up in a house with two working parents. So my dad's a dentist and my mom has a PhD in special education and runs the largest nonprofit in the country for special needs kids. So I grew up in a house with like two equal earning parents, two parents who, worked a lot, but they were very present and in like phenomenal parents in terms of modeling and guidance and compassion and really being there as much as they could be, even though they had full-time careers. So for me, my model was this sort of badass mom who kind of did it all. And I always thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to do really well. I'm going to check all these boxes and get all these degrees and I'm going to do all the same things. And then my husband, who this is a whole other side story that could be a whole other episode. I met him in ninth grade when we were 13. And so he's known me forever. We haven't been together since ninth grade, but we've been together 27 consecutive years.
right.
So he knew when he married me, like what he was marrying into, what he was buying into. He's like, her mom works. She's definitely going to work. And he was okay with all of that.
Mhm.
So fast forward, I get my master's and my PhD while I'm working full time for an educational consultant. And I'm teaching at the graduate school at USC after my degree. And I'm pregnant with my son. I have the baby, and I'm like, I can't go to work. And everybody, including the entire peanut gallery, was like, what? Wait, what do you mean? You just spent your whole life checking all these boxes. And I really can't pinpoint why. And I don't know if it's because my mom didn't stay home, even though that's so much of who I am because she didn't stay home. But there was something in me that was like, no, I really want to be here for this. And I don't know for how long. And I don't know what it's going to look like because I didn't grow up with that, but this is where I need to be right now. So I really kind of tuned into myself and tried to mute the peanut gallery, including my parents, because my parents were like, Sarah, what? What are you thinking?
That.
Yeah, they're like, we just paid for thousands of like thousands of tuition dollars, all of this stuff. You've invested so much time and energy. And I was just like, you know what? I have to listen to my own intuition, and this is what I'm doing right now. And I'm 30 years old.
Mhm.
So fast forward, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to work in 5 years. I'm going to go back to work in 5 years, whatever. I have my second kid, my daughter, Marion. I never went back. And for me, obviously, there were a lot of boring fucking days. It was like Groundhog Day, but there was no other place that I would have rather been. Did I circle the same streets? Did I drive to the same parks? Did I go to the same classes? Did I live that same day over and over again? 100%. But my mom also worked full time. So I saw the grass is always greener. And people who say you can have it all, I don't know how they do that because you can't be in two places at the same time. And like the quote says, like, I think you can have it all, just not all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that puts me where I'm at right now is so while I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, I served on a bunch of philanthropic boards. So I was definitely like keeping my brain active on a part-time basis. But, my kids turned like 14 and 16, and I was like, okay, I can't do one more kid related activity. I have the fucking midlife itchies, as I call them. And for me, the midlife itchies is like just this like, are you bored? Do you want to do something new? Do you need a rebrand? Are you tired of telling people you're just a mom? And by the way, there is no just a mom.
I,
But I felt a lot of the time I was saying that. And then for some, like I remember one dad in a parking lot one day made some kind of like weird, snippy remark to me, like, well, you're just a housewife. And for a second, I wasn't going to say anything. And then I turned to him and I go, yeah, I guess like a housewife with a PhD, and I'm serving on the board as a trustee of your kid's private school that my daughter goes to also. But yeah, sure, just a housewife. That's cool. And he was like, wait, what? And it wasn't I'm this and everyone else is that. It was, once in a while you got to just like kind of re-tap in and say like, okay, what have I done? What are the things that are important to me? And going to school for all those years and checking all those boxes was a really big part of my life. So then when I turned 45 and my kids were older, I was like, okay, I got to do something. I got to do something. And that put me to where I am right now of I got to start this podcast. There's a lot more to it, but that's like the abridged version.
right. And so I love that. And there's so many things about that I love. I was a stay-at-home mom too for many, many years. And I went through a divorce, and that's when I became not a stay-at-home mom anymore. But I remember saying just the same thing. I would say, I'm just a mom, just a mom. And then as I started going down another path, that my next path after being just a mom, right? Because I was like you, I did all the things. I was homeroom mother. I was on the doing all the raising money for everybody else and doing all the things, busy, busy, busy. Sometimes I would just say, I just want to go sit down and have a cup of coffee at an office, right?
Yes, totally, with no phone calls.
Been like, oh, but I remember when I did start my own business, and my youngest son said to me, wow, I'll never forget this because he was probably 15 or 16 at the time. And he said, I never thought you would do something like this. And he goes, I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, I was just going through the motions, to be honest with you. I knew I wanted a business. I knew I wanted more. I wanted more even as a mom. I needed something more for myself. And don't you think a lot of women feel that way?
Oh my gosh, I feel like that's the whole reason why my podcast and your podcast have so many people listening and wanting more is because we're all speaking the same language. It might look a little different. Somebody wants to sort of look different in midlife, and someone else wants to write a book, and someone else really wants to take up becoming a chef. Everybody's version is so different, but I think the underlying theme of the midlife itchies is pretty universal. And then there are women who have been career women this whole time through their kids, childhood and teen years, and they're like, wait, I even want to rebrand. This is not what I still want to be doing, and I want to do something new for myself. And I think it kind of comes to this other theme that I didn't think about before this midlife remix of mine that sort of started 2 years ago. Everyone calls this a midlife crisis, where you're sort of going through the motions of trying to figure out what's next. And if people who have listened to my podcast know that I'm calling this the midlife remix. It's like, I have agency over this. These are things that I can do for myself. No one is coming to save me. I can't order a self-reinvented identity from Amazon because, please, if it were fucking available, I would have already had it on Prime 9 times. Right. I tried. It doesn't exist. I was like, I'll pay extra. It doesn't exist. At the end of the day, you have to do the work. The work. And no one else can do it for you. And that's the hardest part, but it's also the most meaningful part.
Oh, I love that. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, we live in a society right now that we want to just take a pill, and that have those muscles that just look so good, have all the wrinkles go away, and all the things, lose that muffin top. Your podcast, I listened to it today. Oh my gosh, we will link that podcast in the show notes. It was so good. But, I do. I think that we're constantly looking for something. And one of the things I wanted to touch on, too, is I'm so glad you did this before you were an empty nester. I have so many clients that wait until they're empty nesters, and then they're trying to figure out some kind of reinvention. And they're sad, and it's a lot harder. Well, I can't say it's a lot harder because I don't know if it's a lot harder, but it just seems to me, since I had started my thing, owning a Pure Barre studio before my youngest son left, it made the transition when he left home fine. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything to do. Now what do I do? Yeah. And so I think that's what's the beauty of what you've done. You've started this and sharing your experiences and what you're good at. You are good at getting to the bottom of things, asking the questions that people, well, first of all, getting the people on your podcast. That's not easy to get everybody on your
it's podcast,
not.
You do a great job of it too.
Well, thank you. But it takes a lot of work. People don't see that. They think we just sit here. It's just schedules, all the things. And then you ask the questions that aren't really so comfortable. You had a vulva expert. I'm like, I just started listening to that one too.
Oh my gosh. But, wait, I'm going back to 2 minutes ago where before I got on my midlife remix tangent, my midlife brain fart moment was talking about a theme that's coming up in all my podcasts. And that was, and I didn't circle back to it because I have midlife brain fog like everybody else. It's this idea of seasons. And I didn't think of my life like that. I mean, I'll be honest. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. That's going to be season 2. And then season 3 is going to be, mom with teenagers. And then season 4 is going to be like, let's do a podcast. It wasn't like that. But looking back on it now, in retrospect, I really sort of see that what I've done subconsciously is live my life in seasons. And so it was like, okay, season 1 was I'm a student, season 2, stay at home moms, so for me, it's been very helpful to be able to compartmentalize my life in that way. Because obviously, we all have regrets and things we would have done differently. But if you think about things in seasons, you always know that there's possibility for more and there's possibility for improvement or changes. So, like, for example, if you do a season of your podcast and you're like, shit, I really should have done this topic or whatever it was, you know that you have another season of your podcast to go back and do that and make those changes. And I sort of see life the same way, is if we view it in seasons, there's always that potential to do it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally agree. I mean, just what you were saying, when I was trying to remember, I'm almost 57 now, which blows me away. I'm like, how can I be that old? I don't feel
I
that old.
know.
And I don't even feel like that's that old. But I remember I was 44 years old. And when I first walked into a Pure Barre studio, I'd always wanted to be a personal trainer or something like that. But in my first marriage, my husband was very controlling and it wasn't worth the fight. And by the time I was 44, I was like, okay, I walked in this Pure Barre studio. I love this Pure Barre. This is the business that I want. So I wanted to own my own business, and that's what I wanted, Pure Barre. So I talked to the young girls that were 20 and 21 that just opened the studio. And I said, when you guys get ready to open up another studio, I'll be your partner in it. I'll fund the money. Thinking, of course, they didn't have the money, and I just had a little bit of money, but it was a little bit that I could do this with. And they were like, oh, we just opened up this studio. We're not going to open up another one. Why don't you become an instructor? Sarah, I mean, I was like, these girls have lost their freaking mind. There's no way. And I was like, I'm 44. You guys are 20, 21 years old. There's no instructor over 25 in this studio. I mean, no. I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do, but I can't do that. Time has passed me by. That ship has sailed. And they encouraged me to become an instructor. And that is where it opened up my world, to be honest with you. Because once I did become an instructor, I started working with women and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my thing. And I loved it so much. And it made me realize that it doesn't matter my age. For some reason, I was so stuck in thinking by the time I was 44, time had passed me by. And now since then, I've reinvented myself again and again. And
Right.
I think, and it goes back to this seasons, I believe that there are different seasons, and there's going to be a lot more seasons, even at 57, 58, 59, and 60 and on.
And what I love about that is that you can recognize the fact that you do have these self-limiting beliefs, like I'm too old, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not wearing, a little sports bra and pink spandex pants, I'm not what people are expecting. But you were scared and you did it anyway. And I think being scared and doing it anyway is such a key midlife mantra. And it sounds so basic and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's so true. Because if you're not willing to be scared and do it anyway, then you're just going to sit on this hamster wheel in the same fucking place. And in 2023, you're going to look back and be like, yeah, I'm still here. And I still haven't tried the new walking routine, or I still haven't tried the new spin bike, or whatever it is.
Right.
And I just think that this ability to be able to start small, I mean, it's really hard to be this sort of like benchmark, get these grades and do all these things and then start a podcast and an Instagram from scratch. It's sort of like you're like working like in a drive-through. I mean, I hate to say that, but it just seems like such a starting level job, like something my high school student, kids would be doing. And
Right.
that's sort of how I felt when I started this. I'm like, how can I be 45, like starting back at, minimum wage again? Like what? But you have to be willing to put yourself in that situation. And I also think another key thing for midlife women, because we do have a lot of these self-limiting beliefs and like psychological barriers, is this idea of being able to learn as you go.
Mhm.
Because if you
Oh, yeah.
wait to be ready, you're never going to
Never
be
ready.
fucking ready. I didn't know how to start an Instagram account. I did not know how to post stories. I did not know how to post posts or do DMs and all of that. But if I waited until I knew how to do 80% of the things or even 50%, I would still be sitting there thinking and ruminating about it. So I think this idea of like, okay, I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, but I'm willing to just jump in, be scared, start small, and learn as I go is such a helpful thing. We make our fucking kids do it. I'm like, oh, Jake, you should really try out for the, beach volleyball team, even though, you've never done that before. Oh, Marin, you should really do that journalism class. And we make our kids do new shit all the time, but we don't put the same standards on ourselves.
That's so true. I agree totally. And we do have to try new things and do it, like you said, afraid. I can remember the first time for months I would get on that mic doing Pure Bar, and I mean I would almost be sick to my stomach. It was just like, oh my gosh. And but my husband used to say we started dating when I'm on my third husband.
Good
We
for
started
you, the reinventing wife.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. But we started dating when I was started learning how to teach Pure Barre, and so he would come to my classes, and kind of saw me evolve during that phase. And he said I became a whole nother person when I put that mic on, and I did because it was like this confidence finally, and I found my thing. And if we don't push ourselves, we may never find that thing.
Totally. And I also think another really hard part about this whole midlife journey is, people are like, do your thing. But there's so many women who are like, I don't know what my thing is.
Exactly.
And that's part of the battle too. It's not like my whole life I'm like, oh, I've wanted to start a podcast and an Instagram and put my husband's colonoscopy on Instagram. Like I've been wanting to do that my whole life. No, of course not. But and some people do have those amazing things that they've always wanted to do, or they used to be an actress and they're circling back to it. And I have to be honest, I'm jealous of people who have those built in, because it seems like so much less work to not have to think of what it is and then actually do the work. I
Right.
almost would have been easier if I like knew what it was and I could do the work part. And so for me, it was really sort of, I hired a life coach and I really thought through, all the things that we were talking about. And I was like, okay, what am I good at? What are my interests? And I thought, okay, well, I'm a nerd. I like to research. I like to curate information. All my friends call me for advice. I love podcasts. My husband was like, please don't write a book. You're going to be trapped in the house and bitching that you haven't left the house in months and you already are. Please don't do that. And I was like, okay, I'll do a podcast. But then I'm like, oh, wait, I don't even know how to do that. And then COVID hit 2 weeks later. And
Oh,
I thought, oh, okay, great. I'm going to try to start a podcast, and I'm just going to be Googling how to start a podcast during COVID. And literally, it was just step by step by step. There was no master plan, there was no assistant in the side wing. It was literally me yelling at my husband, me begging my husband for help, and Google.
and you know what? Googling, you can learn so much. I have a son who's a tech guy. I mean, he's super smart. I'll ask him, and it's like he can't be bothered with me.
No, I mean, my son like does like cryptocurrency. He does this, he does that. He like flies drones, edits photo. Like it's crazy. And I'm like, "Can you help me? This post won't post." And he's like, "Oh, oh, that's helpful." My husband I have a little more control over because I'm like, I'm gonna nag him until I don't stop.
Yeah,
But my kids I have a harder time with. And I'm also humiliating them on Instagram at the same time.
there you go.
But I will say an interesting part of the teen thing is that my son just turned 18 a week ago. My daughter's going to be 16. And I think part of the beautiful part, like you were saying about doing this before they leave the nest, is I always had this thing inside of me that was like, God, I'm kind of bummed that my kids never got to see me the way I saw my mom working, creating something of her own outside of the family. And I'm really grateful that I've had this opportunity to show my kids that even at age 45, you can have an idea. It could feel really hard. You can have like really amazing days where you're high as a kite and really shitty days where you're like, ugh, I can't do this for one more minute. But that at the end of the day, it all works out
Yeah.
for better or for worse. And I think having my kids having seen this journey over the last 2 years is a gift to all of us.
Oh, yes, and I'm sure they're so proud of you.
They
They
are. I mean, when I hit 20,000 followers a few weeks ago, I didn't even know because I'm like such a space cadet. My son immediately texted me and he was like, "Go, mom. I'm so proud of you. You hit
Aw.
20,000 followers." And I was like, "Oh my God, he's watching." And I think we underestimate how much our kids are watching us. And I criticize myself for so many other things. I'm like, I never cook, I don't make meals, I don't do this, I don't do that. And my kids, obviously they see me doing other things that I'm good at, that I enjoy, that I embrace. And cooking is not one of them.
Well, you know what? It's so funny that you
I have to take your class.
well, I listen. So you could do my class super easy. The balanced eating method is it was created because so many people feel that way. I felt that way. Like
Ugh.
it's like I can't cook. I'm not a cook. I don't enjoy cooking. I don't want to be a cook. I had no desire. I just want good, healthy, quick food. That's
Yeah.
what I want. And can you just bring it to me or somebody prepare it for me? That would be the easiest thing. But we created it because I have a friend who is really good at that. But I learned these little short things along the way, little small things along the way that did make it easy for me. And so that's I would consider myself not a gourmet cook. I mean, I'm not having a dinner party and having people over. That's for sure. This girl, that is not her at all. My husband would love that, but I will not cook for a bunch of people. I will cook for my kids. I'll cook for my husband. That's about it. That's as good as it gets. But I definitely think that we figure out what we're good at, and it does take trying different things, exploring different things. But the other thing is, I think the more we do that, like, what's the alternative? Just to sit around and go to lunch and just go, I mean, what would you do? I mean,
I have no idea.
I mean, yeah, and I want to keep growing and learning, and that's why I love your podcast, because you are interviewing people who I want to hear. I want to hear like what's going on. What about the vulva that I need to know about?
Under the
You know
midlife
a lot
hood down
about it.
there.
Nobody talked about that. Nobody, that's why I talk a lot about perimenopause and menopause. Who talks about that?
It's
We
hard.
need to talk about that because these things are real and they are affecting us. And yet we don't really feel like we're old enough to be going through perimenopause and menopause. That was our grandmothers. It was not us.
I know.
We're
And I
old
don't
enough
even,
for
to be
that.
honest, I don't even remember my mom going through menopause.
Me either.
That was like not a discussion that we had. And whereas my house, my daughter's like, if you ask me if I'm getting my period one more time, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, no, 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 I know. I'm just doing a mood reader. I just need to see where we're at. And she's like, stop asking me. But, I grew up in a house where my mom didn't talk about that kind of stuff. She was much more reserved than I am. And then she had a daughter like me who was like, let's talk about your vagina. And my kids are like, oh my God. But for me, that's been I think part of my midlife journey too is like knowing that I'm growing myself, but at the same time, I'm also like available for my kids and their growth, and having those sort of awkward and hard and weird conversations with them. Because if I'm not going to do it, someone else will, or Google's going to.
So
So
true.
I'm diving in, and my husband's just sitting on the side, sort of listening, because he's like, oh, I'm not touching that shit. And when you have one parent who's definitely going to do it, the other parent can kind of just be like, okay, she's got that covered.
Exactly. But it is, and it's so important because just like you said, if you don't talk to them about it, somebody will talk to them about it. And
Yeah.
I think that having conversations that maybe are not the most comfortable conversations, but I think for me and you, I think those conversations become easier and easier for
They
us.
do.
But for the kids, not so much. They're like, oh my God, don't talk to me. I mean, it's awkward. I mean, I have 3 boys. I remember having to talk to them about the birds and the bees and everything
Oh.
when they were really young. I remember my middle son, this is the funniest thing. I can say this because I don't think he listens to my podcast.
Oh yeah, totally. If my kids heard what I actually said, they'd be in therapy.
Well, so my youngest son, I remember I took him for a walk around the block and I was like, girls are different than boys. And, we need you to hold our hand and we need you to, talk to us. Whereas y'all just, it's just like, we're ready to go. And I said, so, you need to be thinking about that. And after I got done with this long talk and this long walk with him, I thought, oh my God, his poor wife's going to hate me. She's going to be like, oh God, here we go on another walk around the block first. He's got to hold my hand. I know what he wants now.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You know what I found is a lot of times I send my kids TikToks or, Instagram posts that sort of underscore the conversations that we're having. And they're like, please stop sending shit. Please stop sending shit. And then my son actually made like a screen recording video of the range of topics that I send posts with. He's like, Mom, you send me like dancing golden retrievers to sex, to this, to that. He's like, you're clogging up my entire phone. And I'm like, I have to just get that information to you, even if you only look at it for a nanosecond.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. That's so great.
It's such a fun time. Midlife and teenagers. It's like literally a hormone stew.
Oh my gosh. I can't
It's a
even
lot.
imagine. Yeah, I can't
It's
even
a lot.
Well, okay. So what's been I'm sure there's so many, but a podcast that has stood out the most to you that you really just enjoyed doing the podcast, or you learned something new?
Oh my God, I don't think I have one that totally stands out because literally every single episode for me has something different. Like whether it's information about the vulva or like some of my mini-sodes that have talked about like living in your midlife shadows or things like that. Every single one has had such elements of truth bombs, expertise, information. Oh my God, I never thought of it that way, that I don't think I have a favorite.
Yeah. Oh, I love the one where you talked. I haven't listened to all your podcasts.
I mean, I can't imagine why.
I don't know. But the one where you were talking about when y'all went on your trip to
Oh my God.
oh my gosh. You guys have to listen to that one too.
Yeah, it was
So
the
many. So
yeah,
many.
it was basically about how my husband tells me that I should travel with just carry on, and I'm like, that's not happening. Then he tells me that we're going to Africa, we're going to be in Nairobi. It's a major metropolitan city. They lose all of our fucking luggage. It was honestly the best and the worst trip of my entire life.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I went on a trip not too long ago to Seattle for a week, and my son and future daughter-in-law went with me, and they each packed in a carry-on bag. I'm like,
I mean,
how do
my
you do
makeup
that?
is my makeup is a carry-on. You know what I'm saying?
You're like
I
my friend Jody. Oh my gosh, if we go on a trip together, it's like 15 suitcases. Like,
oh, I just laugh because I'm like, you know what? This is me. This is who I'm always gonna be. Don't try to fucking change me. Don't try to move me into a carry-on. It's never happening. And he hasn't even accepted that. We still go around and around. And I just keep saying, you do you. I'm doing me. That's another midlife mantra.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, I like that. Well, my husband, recently we were going to Turks and Caicos, and he said, we're packing in one suitcase.
Oh,
I said, we are not packing in
did you do it?
No.
Oh, my
Absolutely
God.
not. I'm not packing it. I've done that one time. And
Oh, my
he has
husband is
more.
so OCD. He wouldn't even share a suitcase with me because he has a whole fucking Marie Kondo system of folding and rolling and all this shit. And all my stuff is just like a pile of garbage, like all mixed together like a stew. He wouldn't even like touch. And our closets at home are totally separate or we would be divorced.
Oh yeah.
You know the person who has like all the matching hangers and all the pants are the same color in the same area? That's my husband.
I would be more like your husband. I'm not OCD, but I'm
Ugh.
more, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to pack in the same suitcase with you at all. There's no way. First of all, he takes up 75% of the room and says, okay, here's your stuff. I'm like,
Oh my
that
God.
ain't gonna work.
That would not work for me.
No, it does not work. It doesn't work. Okay, well, so tell us what you got coming up for your on the podcast. Just so many great things I know.
I mean, look, I think that over the past 2 years, obviously things, change and you rethink. And so I think at this point right now, instead of doing all the episodes as guests, which have done amazing, I'm trying to sprinkle in sort of these solo mini-sodes in between because I think people are also enjoying the relatability of those topics. A lot of people can relate to muffin tops. A lot of people can relate to, tucking their muffin tops into their stretchy jeans, all of those things. And I get so many messages a day kind of referencing all of my different episodes. Because as you know, with a podcast, with evergreen content, you have listeners downloading every single episode every single day. So messages keep coming in on those older episodes. So for me right now, it's really finding the balance between episodes with guests and episodes that are just me talking and trying to figure out. I mean, obviously there's no master plan, as you know, but kind of, reading the room and seeing what people are enjoying and what they want more of.
I'm kind of trying to do the same thing, doing some more solo podcasts because I do think that people like the mixture of both. I think that's a good mix, and I like it for your podcast too because I love to hear those episodes where it's just you, and then I love to hear the questions that you come up with for people.
Well, as you know from our conversation, it probably takes me about 12 hours to prepare for each episode because I read everyone's books. I write out 10,000 questions. And so for me, every episode is like I had a baby. Some people are like, why aren't you putting out 2 episodes a week? Why? I'm like, because it's just me and my pink microphone and my computer that I need a new one. And it keeps telling me my storage is full and all this stuff. So, I'm just growing along with the podcast and along with the listeners and the followers. And come October will be 2 years for me, just like you. And I'm just so appreciative to everyone who's kind of jumped in, given me a chance, jumped in and made connections. I love when people come into the comments. And for me, it's not how many comments am I getting? It's more the conversations that are being had and the new people who are joining into the midlife conversation, because I think so much of midlife is about feeling seen and heard. It's sort of like being a teenager. When you're a teenager, you just want to be seen and heard. And I think by the time midlife comes around, you start to feel invisible again. And you want to feel seen and heard. And I think that a lot of these platforms like yours and mine, where you have a lot of like-minded women coming together, having these conversations, and women are joining in and making comments, and then other people are commenting to those comments, people start feeling seen and heard. And so many messages that come into me a day, I respond to every single person who messages me, even if they message me 600 times or one time. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe that you're spending so much time writing back to each of us. And for me, I would rather have a smaller number of followers or listeners or whatever who are really quality, solid people, like real people who want to join in the conversation, than just a million sort of looky-loos.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm totally with you. I had a thought, but I lost my thought.
Of course you did, because you
Like,
always do. You're
wait,
just like me.
I don't know what it was, but it was going to be a good one. That's all I can tell you.
What do you think? I mean, in terms of what you've done with your podcast, do you feel like midlife women are like, what do you think is their biggest sort of issue right now?
That's where I was going with it. Actually,
Oh,
I feel like that so many women, at least I hear this, think they're the only one.
yes.
They're the only one. And I feel like that's why it's important to, those solo episodes that we do, that they realize that they're not the only one.
Totally.
We experience, I mean, just because we're doing a podcast and we're on Instagram doesn't mean we got it all together.
Oh my God. I don't even know. And people are like, how did you grow your Instagram? I'm like, I have no fucking idea. I literally throw shit at a wall. Some things do well, some things flop. I'm not even like you. I cannot do reels. I am like mentally deficient on filming. I look at your stuff, I'm like, shit, how does she do that?
Well, I've gotten some help recently, which helps. A younger person helps me now do some of these reels. I have gotten to where I can do the reel if I don't have to cut, cut and
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
together. But no, it is hard. And you want to talk to your audience, and that's something I think once you know who your audience is and you know who your audience is, and I think that's the most important thing is that we talk to that woman, that woman that's midlife and is like, what's going on? Because you're 47, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're bound to be in perimenopause, right?
Oh, I'm like, I take birth control pills, which controls a lot of it, but that it doesn't always help. I mean, believe me, the other morning I was like, oh my God, I'm sweating profusely. I've got to get in the shower. So I definitely have, it's like the muffin tops, the hormones, the moods. I want to eat the whole cabinet of chocolate, and then I see people like you and I'm like, shit, she's like doing strength training every day.
No,
She's got
I
all
know
her
that.
shit.
See,
Yeah, she's got all her shit
remember,
together.
remember, Instagram shows. I said this on Instagram the other day. Instagram does not show everything. I don't share everything. I just had something last 2 weeks kind of rocked my world and threw me for a big loop. I didn't share it because it's private. So I don't
Yeah,
share everything, and because I don't think everybody has to know everything, but
I agree
everybody
with that.
should know that I do not have the perfect life. I mean, obviously, I'm on my third husband. I mean, it's not like I have this real good marriage track record. I mean, like,
Yeah, look, you know what? Everyone has something, but you can flip the script on that too. You can be like, damn, look, Deanna like doesn't take mediocrity and she
yeah,
moves on to the next thing when she needs to. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're willing to reinvent on demand.
that's
That's a
right.
lot better than fucking sitting around and accepting mediocrity or something less than you think you deserve.
Right. And I think that is. It's about evolving and growing and knowing. I mean, you don't as a little girl, you don't think about, oh, I'm gonna get married and then I'm gonna get divorced and then I'm gonna get remarried again, and then I'm gonna get divorced again. And then no, you don't think like that. You think you're gonna get married, you're gonna have babies, you're gonna be with your husband, and he's gonna be this Prince Charming that's so fabulous. Well, welcome to the real world, girls.
Yeah,
That's
and I
okay.
think I think that's another really important topic in midlife is this whole idea of growth. Like if you only have one person in a relationship growing and changing and evolving and doing the work and the other person isn't, that's really hard.
Oh yeah.
And believe me, half the time my husband's like, what is this woo woo shit you're talking about and doing? Like, what? But at the same time, like, he's totally doing different things than he used to be doing. He's questioning himself. He's taking himself to the next level. He's the one who started in with that whole, like, weighted vest. I'm going to
I
wear the
know, and
weighted
I got
vest
the
every
weighted
day.
vest. Oh, Sarah, so I bought the weighted vest from your link and I still haven't used it because it's so hot here.
I know you have sometimes if you're in
Yeah.
the hotter places, you have to do it on a treadmill with air conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to do it. I like to walk outside, and when it gets cooler, I'm gonna put it on and walk outside with it. But no.
No, for sure. You can't do it if it's like such bad humidity. You would like it's like armor. But that one that I did link, it's actually the thinnest and the least oppressive of the bunch. But yeah, so I feel like for me, like even though my husband and I have been together 27 years and people are like, how do you do it? And my only answer is that we're both willing to grow together, and we may not be doing the same things or wanting to grow in the same areas, but nobody's stagnant.
Right. Yeah. I think growth is so important. I think it really is so important. And I think that when we stop trying to become better, and I'm like, what again, what's the point? What's the point? I mean, why not be open-minded and learn more things, and be able to share more things with our children, and with now I have a granddaughter, and so
She's
now
so cute. Oh.
oh, she's like my world. When we get done recording, I'm going to see her.
Ah,
That thing is just, I'm like, she has changed my world.
I love that.
She's just the
There's
cutest.
definitely girl energy and boy energy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know you're a master of boy energy. So to have the girl energy must be amazing.
It is so amazing. And she's just so, I keep telling my boys, I'm like, y'all were never this good. Where did she come from? It must be, she must take after her mother, because I'm like, she's just so wonderful. It's such a special relationship. So I've
I
always
love that. No, I mean, my kids are still young enough where I'm not into like grandparent zone yet, but I'm sure my husband and I will get there at some point. First, we got to do college applications this year.
Y'all gotta, well,
We have to do 50% of empty nest, all of it.
yeah. And how do you feel about that? Empty nesting.
Oh my God, I'm dying. I can't even think about it. My son's girlfriend is a year older than he is, and she just left for college.
Yeah.
And, we're all very close. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, what's happening here? But I just keep trying to remind myself, okay, like I started this project of this podcast and the Instagram for me so that I have something that's my own. And I just keep reminding myself that, like, I've been a good parent. I've instilled, solid values and morals, and, definitely helped to build those roots to become wings. But I don't think anything prepares you for the day of. I have friends right now who are sending their kids off to school. One of them I was on the phone with last night. She's like a disaster.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I don't think you know until you get there.
Right.
And I also think it depends on how your kid is responding to the situation. Because if you have a kid who's super distressed, you're going to be more distressed.
Oh, yeah, because if they're upset, then you're going to be like, oh no, are they going to be okay? I don't know. And I do see my friends that have daughters seem to have a harder time. I don't know why. And maybe that's just me seeing that. As my boys, it was just, I don't know. And by the time my third one,
you're like, bye.
I was like, hallelujah.
I also think, honestly, it depends on if your kid's staying in state or going out of state.
Yes.
A lot of these kids in LA are going to the East Coast or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a trek.
Yeah.
It's a trek. And I think when you're staying in California and I live in LA, if you know that you're a 2-hour drive away, it just psychologically feels different than planes, trains, and automobiles. And I also think that being an LA girl who went to school in Pennsylvania, I think you underestimate the power of the sun. And of daylight and sunlight. You know what I'm saying?
Honestly, I can't even imagine doing that. That sounds horrible. Like that was a bad idea.
It's like It's so hard. I'm saying my kids are like, yeah, we're definitely leaving California. I'm like, that's fine, but I want you to know that like being on the East Coast without a lot of sun during the winter is hard for LA kids. Like, don't be fooled. Like, I know you're gonna have a great puffy jacket down to your ankles, but it's cold and it's dark.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, look, I don't care where my kids go as long as they're happy. And the one thing I just keep trying to remind them and remind myself is that everything within reason is changeable,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
And it's not like a decision you make now is your forever decision and things change and shit changes and whatever. That I think a lot of these kids are like, thinking that these 4 years of college are going to determine their whole lives and everybody has to go to Harvard and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's so many kids who go to Harvard and like live in their parents' basement and don't do anything with their lives. And there's kids who don't go to top tier ranked schools and do amazing things.
So
But I
true.
think we get so, especially like in Los Angeles, I can only speak for that right now. It's like you would think that college is your whole life. And when you really look back on it, like this whole idea of the seasons, it really is a blip.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah. Well, and I can see it from my children because I mean, mine are 33, 31, and 28.
Which
And
is crazy because you look like you're 33.
thank you. But it's crazy to watch them after college, and they have all three of them had so many different jobs, careers. I mean, my oldest son is on his probably fourth or fifth career. I'm like, it I think it all just evolves, and they have their own seasons too. I mean, they
Yeah.
really do. And
What's
it's
your
not
empty nest advice, Deanna?
to find something that you love to do before they leave.
Even if it's just a bar class aficionado.
It's just anything that so that when they do leave, don't put. Well, I think the people that are just so over involved with their children, and then all of a sudden their children leave, then they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know, where to go, they've lost their whole identity. They've lost who they are. And that's where I think it becomes very, very difficult. I think those are the people that struggle the most. So I would say find something, find a group, find something that's just about you, because we are more than mothers. We're more than wives. We have so much more to offer the world. And being a mom and being a wife, I mean, it's not easy and it's very time consuming. You're like, well, when am I going to find the time? But you see, as your son and daughter got older, there was some time in there that you could choose, to do
I mean, my
other
kids were
things.
both just gone for a month. My son was in Philadelphia, and my daughter was in New York, and I was like, okay. So I've had, and they used to go to sleepaway camp for 7 weeks in the summer. So I've had times where they haven't been home. But I guess the difference is like, I always knew they were coming home. And
Mhm.
it's not to say they're not going to come home in college, but it's just different.
Oh, it's totally different when they come home in college. But I will say, I didn't love that part either because they would come home for Christmas break and mess up the whole house. And now I had my own little routine going and they
Yeah.
were messing up my routine. Like, wait, y'all need to go so I can do my thing again. It's kind of like it's that time where it's more about what I want to do. I was just talking to a client yesterday and she was just taking her youngest daughter off to college, and she said, I'm so excited. It is me time now.
Yeah.
And I think that, but unfortunately, really, until they graduate and they are really paying for their own, they'll always boomerang back. I had a son, well, all three of mine ended up back at home for a little while, even after college. So,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of nice for a minute or two.
for
But
a
I
minute, just a minute.
no, believe me, I went downstairs this morning and I was like, "Oh my God." Like the kitchen with like the sink was stacked to the ceiling. I guess my son and his friends must have made pasta last
Oh,
night. There's like strainers and I'm like, I can't even look at this shit right now. I'm gonna wait till his ass wakes up and he can clean this up. Like there is no way I'm dealing with with this right
Oh
now.
gosh.
But I think another interesting thing that you just hit on, which is one of the things that comes up in my podcast a lot, is this idea of midlife self-obsession. And I don't think midlife self-obsession in like a narcissistic way. I think about it as this is now my time. Like you said, your client, this is like me time.
Right.
I'm going to obsess about all the things I've wanted to do that I don't even know I want to do, that I need to do, all of those things, and I'm not going to feel badly about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. There's just so many things that at midlife we experience because, some people are at that midlife and they're, trying to get kids off to college and then taking care of their parents. And there's
Oh,
so many things. And I know you and I could talk forever and ever, but we got to
I
wrap
know.
this episode up so that everybody will be
I
like,
know.
they're never going to want to listen to another one of my episodes because this is going on. But Sarah, tell everybody how they can find you, where they can find you, and everything. So
The Instagram is at the Flexible Neurotic, and the website is www.theflexibleneurotic.com, and the podcast is on all podcast platforms.
and it's so good, so
Oh,
funny,
thank you.
so informative. And I would tell you guys to listen to the ones that come out recently, but go back, listen to our very first podcast. I think you get a better sense of who you are. You kind of touched on that at the beginning, but I loved your first podcast, and I really want to just like binge listen to all of them. I need to just go for a long walk with my weighted vest.
Yes, yes. Maybe you need a handheld fan.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. And I'm sure you have a link for the handheld thing.
Oh,
Right?
of course I do. The one that I carried through New York City. Yeah, of course.
Oh, Sarah, thank you again so much. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. This
Thank
was
you.
fun.
So fun. Talk soon.